Without further ado, Werner, you're up, buddy.
Thank you. We were scrounging for an interesting topic to discuss and try to get everybody out of the winter doldrums. And RPO 684 probably doesn't do the subject enough justice. But RPO 684 arguably is what turned the Corvette from a boulevard cruiser into a sports car. Okay? And just give you a little bit of background. If you think about Corvette, or the situation that occurred, you know, as far as racing cars and sports cars in the United States, if you think about it, we basically were racing cars since the 1910s or so on horse tracks, you know, oval tracks, and they were driving around in circles. And, you know, automobile racing largely did the same type of thing. And if you look at, you know, what ARCA and eventually NASCAR did, we had a bunch of cars driving around in circles. And in Europe, it wasn't so much that way. They didn't have a whole lot of good places to devote to big circular tracks, but they could race through cities and towns and villages, and you know, pretty much every country in Europe, you know, we talk Italy, Switzerland, Belgium, France, Germany, they all had very well-known motor racing venues where people were taking sporty cars and driving them through villages and towns and turning both ways instead of always making left turns. And yeah.
How is that different than rallies? Because I know in Europe, weren't they doing a lot of rallying? I'm not sure that's the same thing you're talking about.
Well, you know, I don't know if you'd call them rallies, but they had some of these races they had, like the Mille Miglia, which means 1,000 miles, started up in Brescia, Italy, went down around Rome and then up the other side. And the rules were whoever could get there first was the winner. I mean, and they were driving through towns that were with roads that were designed for ox carts. And the public was there right next to these cars that are ripping through there at ridiculous speeds.
Well, most of the rallies were sedans, so that's why you had 911s were able to go in, middies.
Well, I'm talking about back in the 90s. This is all pre-war.
Oh, pre-war. Well, you were asking about the rallies.
And so, but what I was getting to is, you know, after World War II, some of our soldiers came back here, and they'd been exposed to some of these cars that would turn left and right. And some of them got involved in it and came over and started sports car racing. And sports car racing was really with people driving European cars, and maybe there was a few tracks like up in New York there at Watson's Glen, and you'd have people like Harley Earl going there with the Y job, with the sporty Y job, and watching people with these British and German and Italian cars racing around. And then they started running on some of the airports, the abandoned airports and stuff like that. And there was some interest there among management. Harley Earl in particular was building a car to run at Le Mans. Okay, the Corvette SS.
It's also virtually the first race at Le Mans from America.
Right, and so, and there was also other champions, including these three gentlemen here, which we should all recognize. You know, Zora Duntov, Ed Cole, and John Fitch. And Zora was probably the most uniquely qualified guy at General Motors to get involved with motorsports racing, well, as well as Fitch, that had raced for Zora raced for Porsche and Fitch for a number of other German Mercedes and teams like that that understood sports car racing. But you know, GM didn't have any cars that could really compete in any form. If you look at NASCAR back in the 1950s, you know, it was dominated by Hudson and Chrysler with their Chrysler Hemis. And, you know, Chevrolets with their 216 cubic inch splash lubricated 6 was not a competitor. And so Ed Cole, you know, kind of let Zora stretch the envelope a little bit, and they set some records where Zora went out to Pikes Peak and raced and established some records. And they thought, oh, this is pretty cool. What else can we do? And so they went down to Daytona Beach, and you know everybody knows the record runs that were down there, where Zora and Betty Skelton and John Fitch took 3 production 56 Corvettes and ran on the beach and set some records there. And so Cole said, well, what else can we do? And he announces to the press that we're going to run at Sebring next spring. This is like Christmas time, and he's got to have cars ready to run in March at Sebring. And he told Zora, you know, to take this project on, and Zora told him he was out of his mind, and Zora was absolutely correct. And but Cole's not used to having people saying no thank you to a directive, and boots Zora aside and puts Fitch in charge of the program. Fitch doesn't know that Zora has been booted, and he, just a good working servant, takes a handful of 56 Corvettes down there, and the first cars wouldn't complete 1 lap of the circuit successfully. Okay, they could not complete 1 lap. But, you know, dedicated soldier, he ends up starting this air bridge from Detroit, bringing parts down there to try to get, you know, the engine to stay together, the transmission not to seize up, and get brakes that would hold up. And they start putting pieces on the car, and very disciplined gentlemen, and they did quite well, better than they deserved, is what John says. We were disappointed with the results, but they didn't totally embarrass themselves. They actually, some of them completed the thing. Yeah, he was very disciplined. He started out with a half dozen cars, and eventually he decided that, you know, these cars are only going to use 2nd and 3rd gear, and they're going to stay under 5,000 RPM, and you're going to run lap times at this point, period. And then if you got to a certain point in the race, then you could start using the first gear as well, and use them. But they knew where the weak links were in the drivetrain, and they didn't abuse them. And so, anyway, and to compete in these events, you had to have all your parts had to be homologated, okay? So you couldn't be running at these events with experimental parts. So one of the jobs, these guys were putting together these pieces and hanging them on the cars, but they were also releasing them as optional parts that the public could purchase, okay? And so eventually, you know, this project led to the 57, which was an extremely successful car. As for the racers, I mean, the Corvettes, I guess, always handled acceptably well. Okay, you could, you know, they had enough, even the 6-cylinder ones, you could let the back end hang out. But the problem, the handicap with them, was that they did not have the ability to downshift in a low gear and come out of the turn. So everybody else would run right away from them. All these little light European cars would be gone. And so, you know, they knew in 53 and 4 that Cole was, you know, he was the father of the Cadillac 331 cubic inch overhead valve engine, the Olds Rocket 88, and finally the small block Chevy, that they were going to be putting these engines into the car. And if you were at Eyes on Design last spring, you saw that 53 Corvette with a 265 in it. That was an O-265 that was in there. That was put together for one of the execs at GM named Harry Dumville. And they didn't have a transmission to put into the car, so they were really looking for a 4-speed transmission. And that car was originally built with a 1928 Rolls-Royce 4-speed. Wow. Okay? And fast forward to 57 or late 56, they needed a 4-speed bad, and they knew it. Unsynchronized 3-speed, which doesn't work very well if you can't get back in the first gear unless you're stopped. And so they shopped the world for somebody to sell them a transmission, and nobody had one. So they finally got into bed with Borg Warner, and Borg Warner produced the Borg Warner transmission that we're all familiar with for the Corvettes. And the first 7 prototype transmissions went to Sebring the following year, and they all performed splendidly. And they didn't need all. They had running, I think, 4 cars instead of 3 or 4 spare transmissions. So one of those prototype transmissions ended up in Dumville's car, and so that car's still around here. And there's a book that's just been put out by Ken Kaiser that talks about how significant that car is. So anyway, what I thought I'd talk to you about is what the RPO 6, all these pieces were released eventually in a package. You could just say, check the box. The RPO 684 meant you were a boy racer and you wanted to go racing. So I thought I'd explain to you a little bit about what some of the things that they did. So let's move to the next slide. This is a picture of what it was like down at Sebring with some of the people working underneath, and you know, they don't even want a hoist to work on, but they're putting these cars together under the worst of situations. This is 1956. Okay. Oh, this was, I found this kind of interesting. This is Chevrolet's merchandising guide that came out with the 1958 Corvette. So this is late 57. And you can see here, oh, you know, maybe you can't, but it talks about what the market was there. MGA, Triumph TR3, Jaguar, Austin Healey, Mercedes-Benz, and the Ford Thunderbird, okay? And it talks about our opportunities to compete against these people. And certainly you got the big kahunas, you know, the Mercedes-Benz, the Gullwings and stuff like that, if you really had the things. But this is what the sports car, when you went to a sports car race, this is what you were watching. You know, British and Italian cars, German cars, going around and bopping up. Oh, that's even better. So, okay. So, I thought this was kind of interesting. See, this is a GM publication telling you how to compete with these people, you know, and what you got to offer them instead. Okay, one of the first things that they started working on was the suspension. You know, if you take a suspension and you collapse it against the jounce bumpers, okay, when you're cornering hard, at that point, and you hit an obstruction in the road, there's nothing with any give left, okay? I mean, you got a tire, that's the only cushion you might have left when you hit an obstruction.
The only movable part you're talking about.
And so, when your suspension is all the way down to nothing, and you hit something, it's like riding down the road on the back of your red Flyer. And it just bounces into the air, and whichever, you know, if you're in a turn, you're going sideways and into the wall. And this is one of the things that Zorro was concerned about, because like at Sebring, there were people whose houses were adjoining right along the runways. And so if somebody's going sideways through that ship with the suspension completely collapsed, they're going to go into somebody's living room. Okay, so they came out with spring packages, and they, you know, basically had higher spring rates and bigger sway bars were one of the key parts that they did immediately. Certainly when you put bigger sway bars in it, you can stiffen the car up, make them oversteer more, which is the way that they made these cars handle. And if you look at all the old racing action shots, it's all of the Bondurants and Gold Strands and people with the ass end of their car hung out, because that's how they drove, with the rear end, not the front. So, and we'll talk more about this. This is the heavy-duty brake pads. Next, okay, this is. I just wanted to show. I was hoping to show.
Right. That's what I'm just saying. There's a few of us that were around when this was all going on.
Right. Yeah, some of us were still in diapers, but I wanted to show that these are the stock springs, you know, that we're usually seeing. You have these Signode bands on them holding the leaf springs stacked together, but the heavy-duty packages had these big, heavy, riveted on, clamped together, and these springs look much the same, other than the fact that they are thicker, okay, And if you'll notice, they don't have these reliefs for the next set of bands to go on. So if you find a set of these springs laying around, and those are pretty desirable springs, if somebody's wanting to put a big brake car together, that's what you're gonna need. So look for those bands. This is a set of springs I took apart because one of the leaves was cracked. What I do is I keep all my old springs, and then I can take the one broken one out of one and put it, build another one together. I shot peen the leaves and build one spring out of two bad ones. But that's, the easiest way to recognize the differences, plus this here. So, yeah, so another shot of the same thing. Another thing they wanted to do is the steering was pretty slow, and they came up with this ingenious device. This is the plan view shot of the front steering linkage. This is the pitman arm, and so when you're turning your steering wheel, it pushes this relay rod forward and back, this is the bearing here, so this would all swing around it. The tie rod ends used to hook up right here, so they made this adapter on here, clamped it to the front, knocked out the two tie rods, and clamped this quick steering adapter to it. And I've got one here that I thought I'd pass this around and everybody fondle it, but I don't think it's too exciting. But you can see what they did. It was just a pretty crude adapter there, but by making that length of the lever longer, it quickens your steering up. So if you are manly enough, these cars didn't have power steering, all the hot shoes in the Corvette Club that were driving C1s all had these things on them.
Absolutely.
See, here he's a pretty big guy. This was what the state of the art was. And you had a big steering wheel, and that was the only advantage you had at that time.
Right.
Today we are put more and more electric power steering conversions into these cars because none of us want to wrestle with this stuff anymore.
But it's a simple design when you look at it, really.
Yeah.
And how effective it is.
So that was part of, that's how they quicken the steering up, so for better response. Oh, here's these pieces I was just showing you that I'm depriving you of fondling. Pardon me?
Can I look at it? Is it okay?
Sure. Yeah, just don't drop it on anything that might be hurt, like your foot.
It's very hard to destroy that.
Yeah.
Is that a production? What's the construction of the adapter itself? Is it just stamped steel or?
It was probably machined out of a thicker piece of
Yeah.
steel. Yeah, you can pass it around. I got
You can see it right
I've
there.
got a bunch.
It almost looks like a forging, but it's not. But it's a thick piece of steel.
I've got several of them I've taken out of cars because I wasn't manly enough to drive them. So, yeah, I've seen them where they've welded them together. If they do it right, they should have tapered holes in them so the ball joints or the tie rod ends seat properly.
Right.
So Werner, those are part of the 680.
RPO 684 package. These were all sold individually at first, and eventually they incorporated them into one RPO, and you got all this stuff.
Do you remember what the number was, like if you went and ordered it over the counter?
In 1957 or something, yeah, you can look at the list, you'll find these things listed individually. Or you could just go and buy the parts.
Is it like in a parts-like thing? It's not obviously you couldn't order the car with it, right? At first, you had to.
Most of these things you could buy from,
Yeah, like you had to buy it over the counter, right, and then put it on your car yourself.
Right.
So it would have been listed like.
But eventually it was part of the package.
What years did this happen?
Did they have like a?
Sorry, 57 to 62.
Yeah, that's it. I was just going to tell you that's it. In '63, you had the whole different front end on the.
That's right.
Did they have any kind of like racing, like catalog or something listed like special high performance parts or something?
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't doing that.
There were how to hot rod type of books that told you how to build these things.
Yeah, I've got some of those, but
I've got one that John Hinckley left me, so on my desk that I picked a lot of. You'll see some of these pictures I pulled out of there. Yeah. Another shot of the same. Okay. Brakes. That was probably another one of the biggest Achilles heel on a Corvette. Going faster than trying to stop a heavy car. You could have a blowout your tennis shoe trying to stop a Corvette on these courses. It was really tough. And the idea is you got to find a way to get rid of heat, to get rid of brake fade. And so one of the things that they did is go to a finned drum. So there was a number of things that they did. They tried different lining materials that were more resilient. They and this is a picture of the drum, which has got fins on the outside of it. And there's some pretty extensive things they did to try to get air to get to the drums to cool them better. These are what they call the big brake system. I have some drums here, but I'm afraid to pass them around because they're heavy and they're really fragile. You know,
Drop one and you'll remember it.
well, you drop it and break a fin off. Now you got a heavy drum that's out of balance. So you've got a $5,000 paperweight then. So anyway, I decided I wasn't going to share that with you guys.
Werner, were those brake drums specific to Corvette, or were they from another GM product like a Buick? Didn't Buick have finned brake drums like
They
that?
did, but these were different.
They were specific.
They were specific, you know,
Corvette.
the Buick especially had a bigger bolt circle,
Ah.
you know, but they, and these things evolved also. So you can see they also went with these center metallic segmented brake shoes. And these things were, the nice thing about them is they would work really well when they were hot. And they worked better when they're hot than when they were cold. I mean, when you were cold,
You can't stop.
yeah.
I had them on my 57 Chevy, I had a 409 in it, and I put those on back in the day, and when that car was cold, you couldn't stop the car.
That's right.
You ride the brake all the way down the first street.
You know, there's, 63 and 4, you could get metallic brakes as an option, or the heavy-duty brake package. And they were really kind of, you drive it, and you, like, every time I had a 64 Fuelie with those brakes in it, and I said, well, first stop out of the garage, I know what was going to happen. What was going to happen? You know, and so, but you know, you get used to that. But when you're driving down the freeway, and now you pull off a freeway ramp and you hit the brakes, and there's nothing.
You've been cooling down all the time.
You spend a lot of time cleaning out your diaper. And, but once they got warm, they were wonderful. I mean, it seemed like it took 30 seconds for the brakes to apply. But it was probably a second and a half.
when you get to the exit.
You know, anyway, these shoes now, I don't recommend people use them. You set them up, they've got to be set up with clearance to the rotor, so, the drum. Because if they're left, if you set them up like most of them, where they scuff, and they will just fuse themselves to the drum. And then you break them loose, and the segments just come loose. They don't like being jarred. And so, you got to keep them set back. Well, that means your brake pedal's low, and people think there's something wrong with them. And so, anyway, but the racers, they loved this stuff because they worked. Once they got hot, they would stop reasonably well. Okay, here's some pictures of a front and a rear shoe. You see the rear shoe's got less segments on it, and they're much narrower. And there's several different flavors of these, because when they did the Z06 package, they also, got them even better. And I was hoping that Franz Esterreicher would come down here today, because he's got a 63 Z06, 62 Z06, which, they didn't make any of those. And, but they did, the development work was all done on a 62 car that eventually got on a 63 Z06. And those are wider yet. They're 2 3/4 inch wide shoes. But you can see what they look like when they're broken in. Well, here's a set of new ones that I've been hoarding forever. I don't know why. I'll probably die and my kids will throw them away. But that's what they are. So, yeah, these are the boxes and that they come in. And even the hardware is all unique for this stuff. So putting together a package for the heavy-duty brake system is a real project. So this is the drum that I wasn't going to share with you, but you can see that's the fins on the outside, and like I say, they're different widths front and rear. The brake bias is much the same on all these cars. They're about 70-30, so the front's always got to do a lot more work than the rear's.
Because you got the weight of the engine right in front of you.
Well, plus
You're carrying everything.
You know, your center of gravity is about here, and you start,
Right.
and it starts working like this. So so you're going to throw way more weight on the front while you're unweighting the back. So, okay, and in order to keep even the metallic linings cool and happy, they put screens into the plate, into the backing plates. And this is a front backing plate. It's the same as the standard backing plate with some windows cut in it. And the idea was you would apply, they have a big scoop that they would put in the back here, and that would force air into the drums and cool the brakes for you. Now, when you bought the package, they had a stamped cover. I really can't see it there. Anyway, this rusty Hulk here's got the cover still on it. But they covered them up, so when you bought your car, it came with the heavy-duty brake package with these covers installed and the ductwork in the trunk. Okay, they call them elephant ears is the slang for them to do it. And if you have a car with this package on it, the NCRS expects you to show it with the way it came to the dealership. It means these little covers would be installed and your package of elephant ears would be in the trunk. So that's the way they like to judge this stuff. But you can see if you flip it over, you can see all the screens and stuff are there. And this is the same brake system that ended up going on like the Z11 Chevys. You know, they built the aluminum lightweights and they used the Corvette backing plates and brake package on those cars. So you can make these pretty easily. My father made some up for people. We got to do a Z11 clone.
Are you putting any of them back on cars when some guys are going to go back the way it used to be? If you own a 56 through 62, that's really what you're talking about.
Well, we did it for that Z11. We made a set of those.
Yeah.
And duplicated them. And yeah, that's the only car. To me, you know, I'm one of these guys. I'm done building cars to store. I want to use them, and this is not something that I enjoy. So I've taken heavy duty stuff. I put asbestos lining, or not asbestos anymore, but the standard semi-metallic linings in the car so I can drive them.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't modifies all the car where you got to cut all the openings and the fenders and the doors, and so that the air gets flowing all the way.
Okay.
Who does all of that?
Some masochist.
Yeah. There's a whole big issue with that. In order to cool your brakes, you got to have air, and you need lots of
Let's
air.
go to the next slide. Don't steal all my thunder yet.
Quick question, why didn't the factory want to deliver the car with the scoops on it? Why go to the trouble to cover them up?
Well, you know, that package evolved a little bit at a time, and I would guess that it'd be a pain in the ass to put that stuff on the car in the plant, because it's a limited production option, and now you got these special cars that, you know, you're gonna start another offline operation to do it,
Yeah.
throw them in the back,
Yeah.
and it's the
Let the
same
dealer
thing.
do it, because they got
It's the
time.
same, but the LED8s, remember they had flares on them in '69, or that you could get, and that was, you know, Gibb was releasing that as an RPO option until the plant got a, we're not doing that. You know?
Did they pick up water when it rained?
Sure.
Maybe that's why.
I don't know. Oh, it's another shot. The next one, we've been here. Yeah, you can see the better shot that's still unintelligible. Okay, next slide. That's the same rusty parts. Okay, here's the elephant ear I was talking described to you here. Pretty substantial. You see the early SR1 56 Corvettes with scoops on the side of the car underneath the lock pillars. That was to feed air into the back. And eventually they got more sophisticated.
Yeah,
This is what they were doing, as they were getting the air up in the front somewhere and running it through the
Yeah,
channels.
there's a
are
scoop
trying-
in the front that's blacked out, but you cut it out.
If any of you guys are really, interested, we've got a RPO 684 car, the 62 big brake fuelie out there, and it's got all the ducts in them. But this was an idea. It never made production of these early cars. Okay. Yeah, here's This is on a 56 and 7. This is what they were doing. They might have done this down there, but it never was released into production. But you can see the idea was there. This is the inside of the engine compartment. And, you know, that's where the fresh air duct. Well, now we're bringing in fresh air, running it back through the wheel well and down out into the feed and the rear brakes from the front, from the air inlet, the fresh air inlets on the front end.
Then there should be a picture where you cut the door.
Yeah, this is
door
where
from back.
Yeah, this is where it comes down, there's a flex tube underneath the car, and this is where, you know, this is the splash shield underneath the car. Outer rockers right here, and that's where it's feeding the air through the rocker, and then there's another diffuser in the back that blows the air at the rear elephant here. Okay, now, 58, they finally get serious about this stuff here. Now, they've got a good aperture here for getting air in here. You know, 57 doesn't have this fakey drill in here, so the bumper would be across here. So in 58, they really do this package right. And this is the inlet to the duct that goes through the front wheel well, down through the rocker to the back of the car. So this is, everybody thinks this feeds the front brakes. No, okay? There's a second duct down here, and just outside in the radiator opening, square one, I'll show you a picture of that, that blows the air at the front elephant here, but this is where you get the air for the rear brakes. 58 only. If you find a set of these ducts, you've got yourself some hen's teeth on your hand. But probably the most difficult package to put together for, if you want to do an RPO 684 car, don't do it on a 58 because it'll cost you a fortune to find all these pieces. Yeah, so we've done one of them here, and it was.
It's got to be something. I know what we did when we were in St. Louis. We built one, and it was just a pain in it. You had to hand cut all that because the body's built. You know, they figured it out how to do it beforehand, but then they were worried about if you did it in the body shop, what would it be like on final line if somebody made a mistake? You know, how far do you go? So you said, you build it in the final line.
Yeah. Here are the front ducts. They were just really simple, really, you know, quick. They just let air get shot, you know, back towards the elephant ears, and but getting the air to the rears was a big deal. Now, doing it that way was a 58 only adventure. I'm not sure who decided to cancel that, doing it that way, but the big brake option did not include all that ductwork. I mean, it just came with this. Okay, and they also, a lot of the stuff that was the brake package changed over the years too. Some of them had they had like a little fans inside the drums to help pump air around. I'm not sure it really went what the direction of flow was supposed to be, but they cut them out and they were not in there in 59, back in at 60, and just the package varied from model year to model year. Next one.
These are carbon fiber, right?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, these are some.
He hasn't been invented yet. So.
These are a set of original 58 ducts. That's kind of what you're looking at. Yeah.
Mr. Carbon Fiber.
Yeah, these are another couple pictures of the ducts. You can see they're really convoluted. I don't know how they go. You had to be really ingenious to put that stuff to make it and install it. Okay, another part of the package was that these were released separately, but you could get a 5.5-inch wheel instead of a 5-inch wheel. And when you ordered the rim package, and this was pretty ingenious. They basically found some rims that were 5.5 inches wide, and let's use them. But those wheels had barbs on the wheel covers, and so they didn't work with the factory wheel cover, okay, because there was no nubs. You know, the Corvette from 56 to 62 had 4 little nubs on the rim, and you'd have to pop it in, and those nubs would retain the wheel cover. Well, the 5.5-inch outer ring didn't have the nubs, so they couldn't use the full wheel cover anymore, and so they released it with a hubcap, a dog dish. The rim on the inside also had to be different because they needed a way to keep the dog dish hooked up. And so it was 2 production rims. I'm not, and, you know, somebody figured it out. I mean, but they would take, I'm not sure if they're a station wagon rim or maybe something from a Buick or something like that, but a 5.5-inch outer rim and the right center, and they could weld these 2 pieces together and make these rims, because these are the most expensive rims known to man. I mean, if you could find a set of 5.5-inch big brake rims, I mean, they get $5,000 a piece for these steel rims, so check your inventory at home.
I had a set of those and sold them for $25 a piece.
Now you really rocked that guy. Yeah, and so you can see here, this is a 62, and it's got the 62 beanie cap on it. Actually, it's 60 to 62 that used that one there. I just wanted to show you the evolution of the beanies. These were all passenger car units, and everybody thinks they're all the same, and they do look pretty much the same. But this, yeah, it's 59 only.
Yeah.
58 only. If you look at the 58, it's got just 3 little darts on it. Okay, and these were made out of brass. And I'm telling you, there's no way you can put these on and off a car without ruining them. They're very soft. You take the palm of your hand, pop it on there, and boom, and you can see how beat up. This is this part right here. And you can see how. Yeah. And that wasn't. Nobody took a hammer to it to do that. You just. And so the early ones are really hard to do. So in 59, they stiffened it up a bit, and they put a few more darts in there and painted it. And it too doesn't take. I mean, I invested $1,000 in a set of these to get the dents taken out, so I could put them on my car when I got done with it. Jeez. You know? And then we waited until the car was ready to go to the museum before we installed them. I mean, I never want to take them off again. It's got tubes in the tires, so I figure they will be on when I die. So, and then finally, if you back up a bit, the previous slide, you could almost see it, but they finally got smart. They put a couple of ribs around that outer perimeter, which really adds a lot of stiffness there. And so 50, 59, 58, 60 to 62 did this. A pretty robust design, plus these were stainless steel. And so those are the ones that, if you had a choice of what you're going to put on your car that doesn't need the right ones. But these are harder to find and really difficult. I mean, yeah, by the time
Three brand new ones.
Yeah.
3 mint.
Wow. Well, I would have bought them instead of spending. In actually, it's $250 a piece I spent having them bumped out, copper plated, copper buffed, bumped again, and then before I sent them out for chrome to make sure that they were straight enough to suit the NCRS.
That's all development, that's all the development. People were experimenting, no one knew anything. They just tried stuff.
We just throw them around as a frisbee, This is the 57 beanie cap too. I just wanted to show you what that looked like. And see, it's RPO 276. It even tells you on there. Oh, I guess that's the end of it. You can breathe a sigh of relief.
Just out of curiosity, what's the volume of 58 for 684? You know the numbers?
I do have them. Yeah, they're all in the black book.
I know that.
Yeah, I could tell you if I cared enough. Yeah, I'd have known that stuff. They're pretty scarce.
Yeah.
And you could buy, like the rims separately if you want just the wide rims on your car, but very low penetration. Very few people did that. And there's a science to that too, because they put a different tire on the wider wheel early on. So instead of having a 670/15, you might have a 710 or something. But I'm not into it that deep. But it's just kind of.
Yeah, so the 684 was the brakes, the
Shocks. I didn't talk about the shocks.
Okay.
I didn't have any good pictures of them.
Okay.
But larger diameter, pistons in them, so they were stiffer. Sway bars. Steering. And eventually, you could only get it with one of the solid lifter engines. Okay, so you had to buy the fueling or the dual quad with the solid lifter motor.
So it was the steering, the brakes, the ducting once it came in.
58 only.
The wheels.
Yeah.
And and then the shocks and the sway bars.
Right.
And all those attaching parts are different too. So your stabilizer bar is thicker, so you got different brackets and different rubbers.